Much to my amazement, it would appear that 2 years have passed, in fact over 2 years have passed, since my last video on my jack build. That's because I've been focused, of course, on rebuilding and restoring my old Moto Guzzi, which in the main is now completed. The paintwork does need doing and I'm awaiting a new exhaust. But beyond that, it's road legal and rideable. That does mean I can now refocus my attention on Jack and get on with the build. Here he is, languishing on the rear of my bench, where he's been actually for all of those 2 years, although normally buried under a lot more junk than what we can currently see. Let's get him out and have a look. He is definitely showing the 2 years of neglect. Everything has a layer of grime and all sorts of other crap. I have been quite busy in the workshop. So I think the first thing to do really is strip it back down to the frames, give it a good clean up, and then put it back together. Stripping it down will also remind me of all the various bits and pieces that are on here. We'll start off with removing the Weighshaft. When we last looked at the Weighshaft, I had yet to solder on the arm that goes back to the reverser. So we can see that is still loose, and I also need to cut out this section here as well. Straight on the floor. Next, I'll remove the eccentric rod. It's held at this end to the expansion link via a press fit pin, and of course bolted to the driving crank at the other end. So we'll push out the pin first. I did make a little tool for this. That came out a little bit too easily. Next, I'll remove the expansion link along with its trunnion and bearings, all as one unit. But first I need to push out the pin holding the radius rod in place. Another pin is too loose. From memory, actually, I think that was deliberate, knowing that I'm going to be taking this apart a few more times yet. The expansion link, the trunnion and its bearings are held on from the back of the motion plate via these 4 cheesehead screws. Not visible from this side, but there are 2 spacers on the back side that lift the expansion link away from the motion plate. The radius rod is held onto the combination lever, again via a push fit pin, although like the others it's not particularly well held at this point, as expected now. The return crank is held on via a bolt and a taper pin. So I'll just knock out the taper pin and loosen off the clamp bolt. Next, I'll disconnect the slide bars from the motion bracket and then remove the motion bracket. The slide bars are held on via these 2 brackets with bolts coming through from the back side of the motion bracket. And to get the motion bracket off, there are 4 bolts, 2 here at the front and 2 at the back. In fact, on this side I've got 3 cheese head screws and 1 bolt. So let's get those off. This top front one is just straight through, as in clearance holes with a nut on the back. The other 3 are threaded either into the frame or the stretcher. In the greatest tradition, the last one is tight. There we go. So as well as recording this for you guys on YouTube, it's probably more important as a reminder to myself of all the parts. So there is a small shim behind this motion bracket. I mustn't forget that when it goes back on. Okay, I'm going to remove the union link and the expansion link as one. So it's bolted down the bottom here. And we have a press fit pin at the top. So this one would appear to be a little bit tighter. Do please excuse me using shifters. They have no place in any workshop really. No, I can't use shifters. Let's see if I've got a spanner that fits. With all those bits and pieces out of the way, I'm pretty sure from memory that the cylinder block and connecting rod need to come off in one piece. There are quite a few bolts holding the cylinder block on, as well as the steam feed and the steam exhaust ports. I can't remember if that's the feed or the exhaust. It's one of the two. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that this is the exhaust and that this is the inlet. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 bolts, 11 bolts holding the cylinder block on. In fact, there are 2 missing that I didn't fit. Getting in on the front side of this stretcher is particularly awkward, and you can see that one of those is a cheesehead screw. In fact, the bottom screw on the other side of this stretcher is also a cheesehead. Let's get them off. They're all a little bit more visible from this side. There is 1 bolt on this side remaining. There is 1 there loose. So all of the bolts on this side of the stretcher I'm going to replace with cheeseheads because this is just ridiculous. There is now just 1 bolt holding the cylinder in place. So theoretically, when I remove that, I should be able to remove the whole assembly by sliding the con rod off the driving crank pin. Bolt is out. And there we go. To remove the boiler feed pump, I'll disconnect it from the Eccentric and then just remove the 6 bolts holding it onto the stretcher here. 2 bolts holding it on to the Eccentric. I think there may be a gasket between the feed pump and the stretcher. We'll soon find out. Yep, there is. Hopefully I can get it off without breaking it. There we go. Cool. The coupling rods will come off as a complete unit. I've already removed the return crank from the driving crank pin. So it's just the leading and trailing crank pins I need to deal with. They do need to come off square, which makes it quite a fiddly job. There we go. To remove the brake gear, I'll remove each of the hangers first and then try and lift out the brake beam and brake rod assembly as a single unit. Removing split pins is always a great opportunity for stabbing one's fingertips, especially small split pins. With the hangers off, I can disconnect the rods from the brake lever assembly, again held on by split pins. And I'm pleased to report that so far I've not managed to stab myself. The pin should just push out, but doesn't seem to want to. I don't want to mark the head. I'm guessing there's a burr on the hole where the split pin was. And with a bit of jiggling, off come the rods and the beams. I am generally bagging stuff so I don't lose it and get it mixed up. To remove the steam brake, I'll disconnect it from the brake shaft and then remove the 4 bolts which are on the other side of the frame here. There we go. Removing the brake shaft is a simple job. There are just 6 nuts and bolts holding it on. And of course there are the 6 pivots. In terms of getting the frames fully exposed, it is now just really the wheel sets that need to come off. And there we have it, Jack in his naked glory, stripped down to the bare frames. There are a few other parts I've made that weren't fitted to Loco, so we've not seen those come off. They're stored in a box in the workshop somewhere. I don't intend to strip the frames down to their component parts. Getting them bolted together properly and square was a difficult job, involving some jigs and using my milling machine table. I don't want to be repeating that just yet, although I'm sure I will need to at some point later on in the build. What I do want to do is give the frames a good clean up. There is a lot of black scale on them, having used a lot of hot rolled steel, which I would like to remove. We can see that on the outside of the frames I have taken a lot of it off using emery, but that's bloody hard work. So my intent now is to drop the whole lot into a relatively weak acid bath using diluted white vinegar, which should remove the black scale. I am a little bit uncertain as to what it will do to the keeps and in particular the faces for the wheel set bearings, so I need to think about that. And also I don't want it attacking the various mild steel bolts I've got on the frame, so I'll probably do a little test run before I drop the whole lot in there. So whilst that is pickling away in the acid bath, I'll get on now and strip down all these various sub-assemblies, giving them a good clean up and start putting them back together ready for reassembly on the frames. Thanks for watching.